Well, a fateful trip for James Dean in 1955. Let's learn more about this event and what went wrong. Alright, welcome to another episode on Gearhead Man. I'm Mark, your host. Now, this episode, as you've seen from the title, is going to be on James Dean, his wreck and how he died and where he died. Most everybody kind of knows the details, but there are some things that I uncovered doing research on this event, that information from investigators and what they think and what they found out from all their investigation into the accident on all parties involved and so on. And I wanted to share as much of those details with you as I can. And I want to do a little bit more too, maybe a little bit on what's going on with James Dean prior to the accident and what happened afterwards. Even to this day, fans of James Dean leave mementos at the crash site. Alright, so let's get started into this episode. Now, here's the car that James Dean bought on September 21st, 1955. It's a 1955 Porsche 550 Spyder, and here are the specs on it. It's not very good for today's standards, but for 1955, this was a hot rod. And I know there were some probably modifications made to it to make it even more of a race car for James Dean. He loved racing. That was his passion other than acting. He was kind of like, Steve McQueen, Paul Newman, and other actors that raced as well over the years. So this is a cool car. He got it, then discovered there was a event coming up in Salinas, California at the Salinas airport. It was going to, October 1st, was going to be the testing, the inspections, and qualifying for Sunday, October 2nd. Two races which were going to be 27 miles each. So James Dean was pretty excited about that and wanted to enter that event. So he put together a plan. The original plan was to load everybody up in the station wagon that he had and haul his Porsche, which he nicknamed Little Bastard, on the trailer, and everyone would ride up together. But he only had that car 9 days before the accident, and decided he needed some more time behind the wheel because he had two accidents. There were minor accidents within like 7 days of having ownership of that car, trying to learn it and learn how to drive it. So he decided it was 300 miles to Salinas, so he decided to drive the car with his mechanic and get experience behind the wheel in that 300 miles between LA and Salinas. So with everyone riding in the wagon, that left James Dean and his mechanic Roll to they're going to drive the Porsche, or they named it, or James Dean nicknamed that car Little Bastard. So James Dean and Roll were going to drive Little Bastard to Salinas. Now, Roll was a certified Porsche mechanic, so he had the skills to make this Porsche, a real race car. Okay, now they were all set around 2 p.m. They gassed up both the Porsche and the station wagon for their trip to Salinas. So around 2 p.m. is the guesstimate or estimate from witnesses and everyone else they interviewed about when they left Los Angeles. So 2 o'clock they were on the road on I-5 headed northbound towards Central California. They were going to be around Bakersfield area when they make a freeway change to head west to Salinas. Now they were making good time because they hit just south of Bakersfield around 3:30 p.m. and they must have been doing really good time because they got pulled over by the Highway Patrol. Both vehicles in the caravan were pulled over to be issued the driver's speeding tickets. And here's a image of James Dean's speeding ticket for that day, for that evening. On Highway 466, they stopped at a small place called Blackwell's Corner to get some refreshments, get some sodas and snacks and stuff, and then continue on their trip. And they were planning on stopping in Paso Robles and regroup there and get dinner and before they moved into Salinas. All right, they got back on the roadway, Highway 466, westbound, not knowing what lay to wait for them up ahead. At the same time, headed eastbound on 466 was Donald Turnupseed, 23 years old, and he was a student at Cal Poly and he was returning home. He was approaching the intersection for Highway 41 and he was about to make a left-hand turn and merge onto that highway. And he stopped just to make sure traffic was clear, saw nothing, and started to make his turn. And at the last second, he saw James Dean's Porsche coming straight at him, and he tried to turn back to the right to avoid James Dean, and James Dean and Roll tried to make evasive maneuvers and tried to sweep around to the right, his right, of Turnupseed, but both were unable to avoid the collision and pretty much hit James Dean head on. Here's a diagram that shows where all the vehicles, where they hit and where they ended up after the accident. Now, Roll was ejected from the Porsche. He survived his injuries, and unfortunately, we all know what happened to James Dean. He succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Now, here are some photos from the accident. Both James Dean's Porsche and Turnupseed's Tudor. Here is the October 1st, 1955 edition of the San Francisco Chronicle. It was a Saturday. Alright, I'd like to take some time here towards the end of this episode to talk about the wreck in a little bit more detail. Kind of talk about some of the known facts going into the accident or coming out of the accident investigation, and some of the contributing factors that caused the accident that came also out of the investigation. So let's get started on that. Now, one of the main facts in this horrible accident was that James Dean wasn't speeding. I know that was there was a lot of wise tales or exaggerations going on over the years that just because he was driving a Porsche and it was his race car that he was speeding, but and he did get a speeding ticket in near Bakersfield, but it wasn't doing much over the speed limit. Now, the investigation did prove from where the car stopped, came to rest, and how James Dean was positioned inside the car that he was only doing the speed limit, which on that stretch of road was 55 miles an hour. The fact that came out in the investigation, Turnupseed, he wasn't tired or exhausted from his drive from Cal Poly. He was quite aware, awake and alert, all the above, and it was he was sober. He wasn't he hadn't been drinking. He wasn't high, or there was no contributing facts about his condition or health status. So pretty much nothing out of ordinary that would have impacted Turnupseed in this event, in this wreck. Now the same thing for James Dean. They left at 2 o'clock from LA. By the time this wreck, it was around 5:45 p.m. So that's only 3 hours and 45 minutes, just under 4 hours. So that shouldn't have been any contributing factor as well. So that's another known fact that came out of the investigation. Now let's talk about some of the contributing factors to this accident. First one, Turnupseed was headed eastbound. So at 5:45 around that time, the sun was setting, so he would have had the glare of the sun in his windshield, and that probably would have hindered him seeing James Dean when he tried to make his turn. Couple other facts on James Dean's side. Now, his Porsche was painted a grayish aluminum color, so that would have came close to matching the road color. And Dean's Porsche was also low to the ground. It was a small car, low to the ground. The normal, typical cars were the size of the Tudor and the Bel Air and a few other cars manufactured, but all the size of the cars in 55 were good sized cars compared to the Porsche. Another factor was that back in 1955, cars weren't required to have their headlights on at dusk. So putting together all these factors, this is what the final report pretty much called out, that Turnupseed was about to turn left to go onto Highway 41 and continue heading home, and stopped, looked for oncoming traffic, didn't really see anything, and as he started to make the turn, he looked back into the roadway and did finally see Dean coming head on towards him. So Turnupseed tried to go back to the right, turn the car to the right to try to get out of the way of Dean. And Dean saw him way early, but was assuming that Turnupseed was going to yield for him. By the time he determined that wasn't going to happen, he tried to take an evasive maneuver and go to the right of Turnupseed and take up some of the lane of Highway 41 and the dirt road, side road, trying to get out of the way of that Tudor. But neither driver was successful in their attempts to avoid the wreck, and as you saw in that one slide, that artist rendering of how the impact happened pretty much hit Dean head on. Now, after the accident, fans of James Dean started turning out and leaving mementos and flowers and well wishes at the accident site, as you can see here in this photo taken back then. And my understanding that goes on as of today, modern times. Fans and those who over the years got to know and watch James Dean movies, he became, after that accident, he became a legend. And like I said, still today, hundreds, if not thousands of people visit the accident site to leave mementos, as you see here in these pictures. And over the years, even shortly after the accident, a lot of memorials appear in the area. Here's a few photos that I found of one of them and the plaque that was on that tree. They even named a section of highway after James Dean. James Dean's final resting place was Park Cemetery in Fairmount, Indiana. Now, 3 movies is all that James Dean did before he was killed, and only one of those 3 was released prior to his death, and that was East of Eden. And the next 2 would be East of Eden would be followed by Rebel Without a Cause, and then The Giant. And I've seen all 3, and he wasn't a bad actor from what I could tell, with only 3 movies in. I did like The Giant because that was more of a Western feel. Here's a macabre fact, something to do with James Dean's death in his car. His 1955 Porsche 550 Spyder, the transaxle out of that car was pretty much the only thing that survived the accident, sold at auction for $387,000 in May of 2021. Wow. Now, it's sold at a automotive auction site called Bring a Trailer. That site's been around forever. Pretty popular place to sell your cars. I'll include a link to it in the description below. Alright, that brings the end of another episode of Gearhead Man. You have to let me know in the comments below what you think about this episode. If you learned anything you didn't know about James Dean's car wreck, his fatal auto accident. If you found any part kind of unusual or shocking. Part that I found kind of unusual and shocking was somebody paying almost $400,000 for a transmission out of James Dean's Porsche. That's kind of bizarre. But again, it's the end of another episode. I do thank you for watching. I do thank you for being subscribers, and thank you for following me. And we'll see you next week. Quite gone yet. I just want to share one more thing with you, a little bit of trivia. Here are a group of actors that, other than being actors, they also race cars. Some of these you probably already knew, like Paul Newman and Steve McQueen, and of course James Dean. But some of these others you may not know who the actor is because they haven't acted in a while. like Jackie Cooper and a couple of the other ones. But yeah, I just want to share that kind of unusual fact. There are many actors that race cars. Alright, again, thank you for watching. Thank you for being subscribers. If you're not a subscriber and you like what you've seen in some of my episodes, go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. I appreciate the support. The more support I get, the more things it gives me opportunity to get access to, so I can bring those additional things back to you guys. Alright, again, hit that red subscribe button. I definitely would like you to hit the bell icon. That way you get a notification every time a new episode posts. And give us a like, and definitely give us comments, good or bad. I want to know how I'm doing and how I can bring you episodes that entertain or help you learn something you didn't know or find out information on a vehicle you were curious about. And give me suggestions what you would like to see as well. Alright, thanks again. See everybody next episode.